How many times in your life have you nodded in agreement while everything inside you was screaming no? How many times have you smiled to be polite, apologized just to keep the peace, stayed silent to stay safe? Then at night, lain staring at the ceiling, feeling as if you'd just betrayed yourself one more time. Society teaches you that being a good person is the road to freedom. Nietzsche looks straight at that and says, no, most of what we call virtue is just a sophisticated mechanism of obedience. You don't live as you are, you live as others find acceptable. You don't ask, what do I want? You only think, will I be judged if I do this? If something in you is beginning to feel uneasy, that's a good sign. It means that somewhere inside, there is still a part of you that refuses to spend your whole life living by someone else's standards. In the next few minutes, we'll step into a territory very few people dare to touch. Why following others is killing your inner strength, and what Nietzsche really meant when he told you to rule yourself. If you stay until the end and truly understand what's coming, it will be very hard to go back to being the good, compliant person you were before. If you've ever felt that you were not born just to be easy to handle, you won't want to miss a second of this. Number 1. Following someone is how we sell ourselves. You think following someone is about respecting them, learning from them, and listening to them, but it's not. Most of the time, following is a hidden transaction you don't realize you've signed. You hand someone else the right to define your life, and in exchange, you receive something extremely seductive, a sense of safety. The following is the cheapest way to avoid paying the price of freedom. And precisely because it's cheap, it becomes the best-selling product in society. Look closely at how it works. When you follow a person, a group, a value system, you're not just borrowing their advice, you're also borrowing their responsibility. You no longer have to stand in front of the most frightening question of human life. Who am I, and what do I want? You can just stand behind someone and ask a much easier question. What should I do to be accepted? Nietzsche names this fear with a very real feeling, the vertigo you experience when facing the void. Existential responsibility is not like an exam with an answer key. It's like being thrown into a dark ocean with no map and still having to learn to swim on your own. Think of a very ordinary example. Someone who constantly asks their friends, should I quit my job? Should I break up? Should I change direction? On the surface, it seems normal, but underneath lies a confession. They are not capable of making a decision, and they are afraid of bearing its consequences. Elena, a girl who follows our channel, once told us her story like this. There was a time when I idolized a mentor online. She spoke with so much certainty about freedom, financial independence as a freelancer, about quitting your office job and following your passion. I swallowed every word and copied her success formula exactly. At first I was thrilled. I felt like I was finally living a dream life, like I had switched on warrior mode. But a few months later, when my money started running out and I still didn't have a new job, the crisis hit. I kept thinking it was all that mentor's fault. Only much later did I realize the problem wasn't her. It was that I had applied a success formula that didn't fit my life at all, because in reality, I had no clear goal and no idea what I truly wanted. So, chasing someone else's success formula was just my way of running away from the question, who am I really, and what choices am I actually willing to pay the price for? Here is the hidden truth. What makes you follow is not a lack of information. It's a lack of courage to stand in the darkness of your own being. That darkness is the place where no one claps for you, no one guarantees anything. In that place, there is only you and the price you must pay. Following others is how you rent their flashlight so you don't have to see the abyss. But that flashlight always shines in their direction, not yours. You walk a very long way, and one day you suddenly realize you are standing in someone else's life, wearing shoes that don't fit your feet. You'll see following show up in places you would never suspect. Some people don't follow any particular person, they follow the gaze of the crowd. Every decision is weighed against an invisible question. What will people think if I do this? That is a way of living where you always feel as if you are standing in front of a giant mirror, and that mirror has thousands of eyes. What keeps people clinging to external standards hides in something more subtle, a sense of moral righteousness. When you follow a given standard, you get to feel like a good person. You feel you are in the right. And being in the right is a kind of psychological drug. It makes you believe you are above the chaos inside. Have you noticed that people who are always right often live more tense, more rigid lives than those who simply live honestly? It's because they are guarding a fortress. They have to protect the image of belonging, protect the identity they chose, and protect the label of good. So the real question is not, who are you following? The real question is, what are you running away from? Are you running away from the space where you must decide for yourself? Are you running away from the fear of being misunderstood? Below this video is a place where you can be brutally honest. Leave a comment with just one sentence. I'm running away from, and write down the very first thing that comes to mind. Sometimes, simply naming a fear is already the first step in taking back your life. Number 2, herd morality. If following is how you hand the steering wheel to someone else so you don't have to be responsible, then there is something even more subtle, a system that makes you willingly hand over the steering wheel and even feel proud for doing it. Nietzsche gives it a name as cold as steel, herd morality. It doesn't arrive with whips, it arrives with praise. It doesn't shackle you with chains, it shackles you with virtue. And the most beautiful collar is always the one that makes the animal forget it is being led. Herd morality works like a kind of collective hypnosis. From childhood, you've seen the wild parts of yourself get labeled. Anger is bad, desire is dirty, ambition is selfish, speaking frankly is rude. You were rewarded with approving looks from adults, with the feeling of being a good kid, and you mistook that for maturity. But Nietzsche will ask you a question that makes it hard to breathe. Is that maturity, or is it domestication? What does domestication mean? It's like cutting the claws off a wild animal and calling it friendly. When all that is wild has been removed, you become a creature fit for the cage. Here, the cage is not a physical prison. It's a psychological structure, a shared value system that makes you censor yourself before the world even has a chance to. Have you ever felt guilty just for turning down an unreasonable request? Have you ever felt bad just because you wanted a day for yourself? Have you ever apologized for telling the truth, apologized for your feelings, apologized for your needs? If you have, then you've already touched the mechanism of herd morality. It convinces you that personal boundaries are a sin and self-protection is something to be ashamed of. Nietzsche saw a terrifying reversal. Traditional morality often exalts the good as the highest spiritual ideal, but many times, goodness is just a language of the weak used to neutralize the strong. When you lack the strength to create value, you create rules so that others have to shrink down to your size. This is where Nietzsche introduces a harsh but deeply illuminating concept: resentment held in. Those who carry resentment don't dare strike openly, so they attack through moralizing. They don't say, "I'm jealous." They say, "You're living the wrong way." They don't say, "I'm afraid of freedom." They say, "You're selfish." They don't say, "I don't dare." They say, "You're arrogant." Viewed through the lens of social science, this is not strange at all. Psychology calls it conformity pressure. Humans fear being cast out of the group because, for thousands of years of evolution, being separated from the tribe meant death. Your brain is wired to seek belonging. But Nietzsche would say that survival fear has been exploited by modern society as a button to push. All it takes is a hint that if you don't act like this, you'll be disliked, and you start bending yourself. Herd morality wins not because it is true, but because it strikes directly at the instinctive fear of being abandoned. Think of the times you posted something honest online, an opinion that went against the majority, a decision that didn't look standard. Comments appeared right away. "You shouldn't live like that. You should think of others. That's not right." The saddest part isn't what they said. The saddest part is that you started to believe them. You began to adjust yourself to be less troublesome. You started sanding down every sharp edge. You started living like a product that has to pass quality inspection, to the point where you no longer even dare tell the truth to yourself. Yet Nietzsche does not want you to become a crude, amoral brute. He doesn't encourage you to trample others. He's tapping you on the shoulder with another question. Does what you call good come from strength or from fear? Because there is a kind of kindness that springs from inner abundance, a kind of giving that is as natural as sunlight. Herd morality, however, is rarely like that. It is the kind of kindness that comes with an invisible bill attached. You must validate me. You must see me as good. You must live by my standard. Herd morality, then, is a collar both soft and tight. It doesn't make you bleed. It makes you slowly lose your vitality without noticing. It makes you forget that human beings weren't born just to be right. Human beings were born to become. And becoming always smells a little dangerous, a little lonely, a little misunderstood. If you are always safe, there is a good chance you are being led. Number 3. God is dead. And now, once you've seen the collar called herd morality, you can begin to understand why Nietzsche threw out a sentence like a bolt of lightning. God is dead. That line is not meant to provoke religious people. It is an announcement that the very foundation on which Western civilization has been built for 1,000 years has suddenly cracked open, and every crutch that once helped human beings stand upright is shattering in their hands. Nietzsche did not kill a god in the sky. He simply put the right name to a fact. Faith in absolute truth, in eternal laws, in pre-packaged meaning is collapsing. Make sure you understand this correctly. God is dead is not a debate about whether God exists or not. Nietzsche is speaking about something deeper. We have lived far too long on values we did not create ourselves. We borrowed morality like borrowing a suit of armor. It made life look ordered, made right and wrong feel clear. But at a certain point, the modern world, science, history, war, and cultural diversity have worn that armor thin. And when the armor finally falls away, you are exposed, naked, with no ready-made explanation, no divine command left to hide behind. Nietzsche writes in The Gay Science, "What were we doing when we unchained this earth from its sun?" The frightening part is not the loss of belief. The frightening part is the question that comes after. If there is no absolute truth standing above me, what do I rely on to live? People panic because they are not used to standing upright without a supporting pillar. You can see this very clearly in life today. Some people have believed in a value system for years, and then suddenly a crisis hits. Unemployment, the loss of a loved one, betrayal, illness, a brutal disillusionment. All the should be like this, must be like that they once lived by suddenly sound hollow. They no longer believe the old answers, but they don't yet have the strength to create new ones. They stand in the middle of a void, and that void, if you have ever been there, you know, it is not sad in the usual way. It feels like dizziness, like walking on a bridge and suddenly realizing that under your feet there is no road at all, only a chasm. Nietzsche calls that state the gateway to nihilism, the moment when all the highest values that once supported life lose their power. It is exactly the moment you look at your day and ask, what am I doing all of this for? Albert Camus later called that feeling the absurd. Human beings crave meaning, but the universe remains silent. Nietzsche goes one step further and says that silence is not a death sentence. It is a ruthless invitation to create meaning yourself. You've probably noticed there are times when you don't want to decide, so you silently wish someone would appear and tell you exactly what to do. That is the addiction to the crutch. And Nietzsche is cutting it clean off. He says, "There is no one left to tell you how you must live." That may sound liberating, but for most people it feels like a verdict. Because freedom is not just having the lock opened. Freedom is walking forward when there are no lines drawn on the ground. Imagine God as a collective compass. For hundreds of years, people looked at that compass to know where to go. Then one day, the needle starts spinning wildly. In that moment, you'll see two kinds of people. The first are those who dare to endure the feeling of being lost. They accept trial and error, correction and confusion, and slowly learn to read the terrain with their own eyes. The second are those who panic, jumping from one belief to another like changing sedatives. Today they believe in a ready-made healing philosophy. Tomorrow in a steel discipline system treated like a religion. The next day in a community, a guru, an idol. So, if there are no eternal rules left, what are you supposed to do with your life? Nietzsche will not hand you a new rule book. He will give you one uncomfortable truth. You will have to learn how to stand alone. Number 4. The three metamorphoses of the spirit. Camel, lion, child. Here lies the most subtle point that many people miss. Freedom does not come from a momentary act of rebellion. Freedom comes from an inner metamorphosis. Nietzsche calls it the three metamorphoses of the spirit. Camel, lion, child. The first metamorphosis is the camel. The camel is a creature born to carry burdens, and that is your image when you still live by external standards. Nietzsche writes in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, "What is heavy? So asks the spirit that would bear much, and kneels down like the camel and wants to be well laden. The camel steps into the desert with a strange pride. I can endure. This is the hidden line in many people who think they are strong, but in reality are only good at enduring. You see them as solid, but inside they have a warehouse filled with things they never dared to say. Anger, resentment, dreams, swallowed rebellions. The camel lives by a social kind of morality. But Nietzsche says, the ability to endure is not freedom. Sometimes it is only a decorated form of submission. You will recognize the camel in those moments when you work a job that drains you dry. Yet you tell yourself, just push a little more. When you stay in a relationship where you always have to shrink yourself, yet you say, do it for the family. When you want to leave but are afraid of being called ungrateful or selfish, you go on enduring, and you call it maturity. But from a psychological perspective, long-term endurance often comes with a mechanism. A person injects anesthetic into their own emotions to avoid pain. The price is that they also lose the ability to feel joy. The second metamorphosis is the lion. This is the phase where you begin to see how the herd has programmed you. You start to hate statements like, everyone does it this way. You grow tired of pleasing, and you feel suffocated when required to always be agreeable. The lion is the energy of resistance, the instinct to reclaim inner territory. The lion's underlying sentence is, I want, not I should, not they say, but I want. That is an extremely dangerous sentence for society because it opens the door to sovereignty. But Nietzsche is ruthless enough to add one more step. The lion is not yet free. The lion can only say no, but does not yet know how to say yes in its own way. The lion breaks chains, but if all it does is break, you will fall into a new trap, living your whole life just to oppose. Many people are controlled by what they hate. They switch roles from the submissive to the rebel, yet they are still reacting to the herd. If you stop here, you are left only with a burning emptiness of resistance, but still no world of your own. You see this everywhere in modern life. Someone quits their job because they hate the system, but then they have no idea what they actually want. Someone cuts all ties because they fear being controlled, but they become bitter and distrustful, turning freedom into isolation. They think they are strong, but in truth, they are stuck in a state of fighting shadows. This is where Nietzsche differs from all the calls to tear everything down. He does not worship destruction, he worships creation. And creation only appears in the third metamorphosis. The third metamorphosis is the child. The child does not live by must nor by against. The child lives by a more subtle kind of power, the capacity to begin again. It is the state of mind of the creator, light yet sharp, free yet disciplined, willing to try, to fail, to do things differently. The child has what Nietzsche calls the second innocence, a clarity not because it has never known pain, but because it has walked through pain without letting it turn into stone. The child is the image of the truly free person, the one who sets their own laws. No longer needing a god outside to declare right and wrong, no longer needing the herd to validate them. They create value the way an artist creates a work of art. This is where Nietzsche meets an idea reminiscent of Aristotle. Humans are happy when they live in accordance with their telos, their inner purpose. But Nietzsche takes it further. That purpose is not handed to you. It is forged. You do not find yourself, like digging up a ready-made treasure. You make yourself like a sculptor carving a form out of raw stone. The child is the one who begins to build a new life from very small but very real things. Someone who once lived just to please others now learns to say no without a long explanation. Someone who once worked for fame now works for the work itself. Someone who once feared criticism now dares to try and fail before daring to be right. Someone who used to be bound by morality now learns to ask, does this make me live more deeply? You will find the child wherever there is genuine creation. A personal project, a way of living, a self-chosen disciplined habit, a style of existence bearing their unique touch. They don't need anyone's permission because they have become the one who grants permission to themselves. And here is the key message of all three metamorphoses. Do not mistake rejection for freedom. Rejection is just flipping the coin. You are still controlled by the coin. True freedom is when you no longer live by reaction, but by creation. When you no longer ask, what is right, nor only ask, what is wrong, but instead ask, what kind of person do I want to create myself into? That is the moment you stop being a product of the herd and start being the author of your own life. If you are in the camel stage, do not despise yourself. You are learning endurance, but do not die there. If you are in the lion stage, do not mistake the roar for the destination. And if you want to touch the kind of freedom Nietzsche speaks of, you must go beyond rebellion. You must become the child who knows how to create their own rules of the game. Because when you can create your own rules, you no longer need to follow anyone. You only need to live, like a creator signing their name under each day of their life. But to live as a creator, will alone is not enough. That child needs a deeper kind of engine, an inner force strong enough not to be dragged back into the old habit of obedience. And it is precisely here that Nietzsche introduces the core concept so many have misunderstood: the will to power. Number 5. Will to power. When people hear the word power, many immediately think of domination, manipulation, competition, and stepping on others to get ahead. But that is only how the herd defines power, because the herd can only understand power as a whip pointed outward. Nietzsche goes straight to the core and points to the only kind of power that can save a human being from being torn apart by life: the ability to rule the chaos within oneself. For Nietzsche, power is not something you seize from someone else. It is something you grow from within. Power is the capacity to surpass yourself, to shape yourself, to lift yourself above your previous version, like a living being that never stops growing by its own force. If you need an image to feel this, imagine yourself as a rough block of stone hiding a statue inside. Each day, the will to power becomes a silent chisel stroke. It chips away a little weakness, chips away a little of the habit of needing permission, chips away a little of the fear of being judged, until your true form gradually emerges. Human beings do not become free because they are allowed to. They become free because they know how to give themselves form. For that reason, power is directly tied to freedom. Freedom is not just about what you're allowed to do, but about whether you have the inner strength to do what you choose. Nietzsche sees the human being as a noble chaos. Inside are instincts, desires, fears, cravings, contradictions layered on one another like muddy currents. The weak are dragged along by these currents, then call that drift personality, or fate. The strong take those same currents as raw material and build from them a road with direction. That is power in its deepest sense, turning chaos into shape. It is at this point that Nietzsche rips the mask off the two kinds of power that life so often confuses. The weak seek power by controlling others because they need other people's obedience and dependence to cover up their own inner emptiness. You will see this kind of power in those who always need to win every argument, who are constantly imposing their morals, who insist on molding others to fit their frame. They talk a lot about principles, but what they truly worship is the feeling of control. Nietzsche sees that as false strength because it feeds on the crowd. Once the crowd turns away, that so-called strength collapses like an empty stage. By contrast, the truly strong seek power in the hardest place of all, inner discipline. Discipline here is the ability to keep your word to yourself, the ability to choose what is right for you, even when it is lonely. You can see this very clearly in those who are building something long-term, learning a new skill, training their body, writing a book, working on a personal project, changing their health, changing their life. In the early stage, there is no audience, no applause, not even a clear sign that they're on the right track. There are only tired mornings, lazy evenings, weeks of boredom, months of doubt. The weak quit because they don't see results yet, or because no one is acknowledging them. The strong keep going because they have placed power in the right place, not in other people's gaze, but in their own capacity to steer themselves. That is the will to power in its most ordinary, everyday form, silent but persistent. Nietzsche also reveals 3 signs of inner discipline that you can feel as soon as you look at your own life: daring to bear consequences, daring to stand alone, daring to choose a life without applause. When a person dares to bear consequences, they stop using circumstances as a shield and stop using because as a hiding place. They decide and they pay, they fail, and they learn. When a person dares to stand alone, they don't need the crowd to testify that they are right. They can endure being misunderstood and still stay on their path. When a person dares to choose a life without applause, they live like an artist who lives for the work itself, not like an actor who lives for the applause. And here is the twist that wakes many people up. If you are constantly swept away by other people's opinions, shaken by other people's looks, pulled around by the need for approval, the problem is not that the world is too powerful, but that inside you there is no center of power. When that center has not yet formed, you will live in a state of always having to ask for permission. Permission to be different, permission to leave, permission to begin, permission to say no, even permission to live as who you truly are. Nietzsche does not tell you to go out and conquer the world. He points to the hardest and most worthwhile thing to conquer: yourself. When you rule the chaos within, you finally step into real freedom. And when you step into freedom, you begin to live like a creator, signing their name under each of their choices, instead of living like a copy, waiting for someone else to write their life for them. Number 6. The art of self-rule. The art of self-rule, therefore, is the art of organizing your instincts, organizing your desires, organizing your life energy so that it serves a single direction. And it has 3 distinct faces, non-overlapping, like 3 pillars that keep you standing upright: boundaries, responsibility, and way of life. The first phase is boundaries, the ability to say no without long, drawn-out explanations. Many people think no is rude, selfish, and unkind, but Nietzsche would see the lack of boundaries as a refined form of slavery. You are controlled by guilt and by your need to be loved. A person without boundaries is like a house with no doors. Anyone can walk in, anyone can leave mud on the floor, and the owner has to clean up in silence. You can be very kind and still say no. You can love and still say no. You can help others and still say no. The difference lies here. You no longer explain yourself like someone apologizing for existing. You no longer plead just to be forgiven. You say one enough sentence, then stand firm in the silence that follows. Because the hardest part is not saying the word no. The hardest part is enduring the feeling that others are unhappy with you. That very moment is the real test of sovereignty. Whoever cannot endure it will return to yes, like a reflex. You will encounter very ordinary situations in which to practice your boundaries. A relative asking for help in a way that feels like pressure, a co-worker dumping their work on you, a group of friends pulling you into a fun that exhausts you, a relationship that always demands your presence. If you say no and immediately feel your heart racing, your mind scrambling for reasons to justify yourself, that's a sign that inside you there is still a herd tribunal passing judgment. Self-rule begins when you stop standing in that court. You do not need to defend your truth. You only need to live it. The second phase is responsibility, not blaming your childhood, society, or fate as a convenient excuse for helplessness. Nietzsche does not deny that environment, past, and wounds are real, but he does not allow you to turn them into your whole identity. He does not allow you to use them as a license not to change. Responsibility for Nietzsche is not self-blame. It is clarity, self-knowledge, and acceptance. You cannot change the past, but you can decide the present and the future. The third phase is a way of life. For Nietzsche, a human life is not an ethics exam where you are scored right or wrong. A life is something you must give shape to. And self-rule lies in the ability to make your life carry a clear line, intentional and with character. Aesthetic here does not mean makeup or polished appearances. It is the subtle rigor of someone who knows that everything they allow into their life leaves a trace. You choose your rhythm of living like choosing your rhythm of breathing. You choose what you put into your mind like choosing your food. Not everything sweet will nourish you. You choose what your body is exposed to, like choosing a climate. Some environments make you blossom, others make you shrink. You choose how you love so that love does not turn into begging. You choose how you work so that today is not just a tired copy of yesterday. When all three pillars stand firm, you will feel a very clear change, even if it's hard to name. You no longer have to strain to prove you are strong, because steadiness has become your ground. You no longer chase freedom as a fleeting mood, because freedom has turned into a visible habit, repeated through small choices each day. When you live with responsibility, you keep walking without needing to build excuses to hide behind. And when you build a way of life, you are no longer just getting through your days. You are creating a life with structure, with rhythm, with your own signature. Like a work of art, no one else can sign for you. Right at this point, Nietzsche asks a question that will make you start. If you had to live this same life over again, infinitely many times, could you bear it? From here on, Nietzsche stops speaking gently. He throws at you a test so ruthless that if you hear it and still choose to live as before, at least you will know very clearly. That is your choice. If what you've heard so far has made you pause and turn your gaze inward, you can hit like and subscribe as a quiet reminder to yourself. You will come back to keep doing the hardest work of all, looking straight at your own life. Number 7. Eternal recurrence, the ruthless test of authenticity. In Nietzsche's imagination, there is a demon that whispers to you in your most solitary moment. The life you are living now, with every smallest detail, you will have to live again, the same, time after time, countless times, with nothing changed, the same encounters, the same humiliations, the same mistakes, the same tiny moments of joy, the same tired mornings, the same sleepless nights. How will you react? The question lies right there. If you had to relive this exact life an infinite number of times, could you endure it? Nietzsche is not proposing a scientific hypothesis about a repeating universe. He is setting up an extreme mirror to reflect your authenticity. If, when you hear of that possibility, your first reaction is heaviness, the urge to run, the impulse to scream, "No way," that feeling is telling you bluntly that the life you are living is something provisional, something just to get by. Human beings often comfort themselves with phrases like, "later," "when things get better," "when I've improved." Eternal recurrence is the knife that cuts every later in half. If there is no later, if there is only today repeating forever, can you accept the way you are living now? You can see the ruthlessness of this test in very small details. If you hate every Monday morning yet still repeat the same job, the same kind of complaining, the same self-soothing, try asking yourself, if this Monday morning had to come back infinitely many times, would I sign off on that sentence? If the honest answer is no, Nietzsche will tell you something very cold. Somewhere, in some way, you are betraying yourself, no matter how many reasons you give. But Nietzsche does not only want to frighten you. Behind that ruthlessness lies a very deep invitation. If you can say yes to living your life again an infinite number of times, then this life is worth living. That does not mean you enjoy every pain or long for tragedy. It means only that you have made use of them, have needed them to the point that you no longer need to erase them from your history to love your life. You no longer say, "I wish that had never happened." You say, "It happened, and it is exactly what made me who I am." That is the extreme point of an attitude Nietzsche calls amor fati, love of fate, not as resignation, but as active consent. You can test your own authenticity by applying the thought of eternal recurrence to the smallest decisions. Before accepting a job, ask yourself, if I had to live this kind of workday over and over for eternity, could I stand it? Before staying in a relationship, ask, if every moment with this person had to repeat forever, would I agree? Before doing something just to be praised, ask, if this flattering, ingratiating moment had to come back endlessly, would I feel ashamed? The answer doesn't need to be pretty. It only needs to be honest. And in that honesty, you will see very clearly which parts of your life are lived by will and which parts are lived by inertia. No one has a life so perfect that they would want to relive it infinitely. Nietzsche knows that. He does not demand that you turn your life into paradise. He is only asking, if your life were to remain exactly as it is, do you have enough courage to live it with a different attitude? Here, There is an interesting point from the perspective of psychology. Human beings endure suffering far better when they believe that suffering has meaning. When meaning is lost, even small things can crush you. With eternal recurrence, Nietzsche places you before a ruthless task. If you cannot find or create a meaning large enough to hold both the beauty and the ugliness of your life, you will always live in a state of temporary. Eternal recurrence, in that sense, is not only a test of authenticity, it is a test of wholeness. It asks you, do you dare to live a life that you accept as a whole, without picking and choosing, without saying, I only want the pleasant parts? If you feel uncomfortable hearing about this test, that is a good sign. That discomfort shows that your intuition understands you are living below what you could be. Nietzsche wants you to use that feeling as a compass. Whenever you realize, I would not want to relive this moment infinitely many times, that is not a reason to hate yourself, but a reminder that something needs to change, that some structure needs to be reworked, that you need to be more honest. If you have come all the way here, it means that somewhere inside, you no longer fully accept continuing to live as you have. Nietzsche does not promise you an easier life. He only pulls back the curtain so you can clearly see one thing. From this moment on, you know exactly what you are doing to yourself. The freedom Nietzsche speaks of is not something someone else can hand to you, nor is it a single explosive moment, and then it's over. Freedom begins with the first time you dare to say no when you would previously have swallowed it. With the first time you dare to take responsibility for your decision without blaming anyone. With the first time you dare to admit to yourself, I have been living below what I am capable of. Those small steps, repeated long enough, will shape a different person. In the end, no one can truly lead you or save you. Either you continue to let others write your life for you, or you take the pen. And right now, you are writing. Whether you keep writing along the old groove or begin a completely different line is a question only you can answer.